people are very precise and concerned to choose. It's not just about giving interviews, getting selected, and joining the firm. There are many other personal factors as well involved in this.
Absolutely. Welcome back to TS Friday. Every week we talk about careers, hiring, talent, and everything in between. But today we're doing something slightly different because let's be honest, LinkedIn is full of polished success stories that we don't hear enough about. What we don't hear enough about are the stories behind the stories. The interviews that went completely off script, the candidates nobody expected, the hiring decisions that still get talked about years later, and the lessons hidden inside all the chaos. To help us uncover these stories, I'm joined by Nilesh Jain from Netcore, someone who has spent years hiring talent, building teams, and seeing the recruitment world from behind the curtain. So today we're opening the Ghost Files with Nilesh. Nilesh, welcome to TS Friday.
Thank you so much for having me here, Ayesha. So, hey everyone, this side Nilesh. I currently work with Netcore as a part of their talent acquisition team in the HR, and I basically look after the hirings in Netcore for across their campus, lateral, and leadership hirings for the core business functions and support functions. I'm based out of Mumbai. I operate from the company headquarters of Netcore in Lower Parel. So pleasure to be here.
Happy to connect, Nilesh. So let's begin then. Our first segment called Behind the Recruiter's Desk. Nilesh, before we get into the stories, you've probably interacted with thousands of candidates throughout your career, right? What's one thing candidates think they understand about recruitment, but they're actually completely wrong about it?
As per my personal experience, what I have seen and I would have heard as well is that candidates most of the times feel that we are the gatekeepers to reject their profiles or not move forward, right? Whereas we spend a lot of time advocating their profiles, trying to find some fitment, some synergy on which we can progress their candidature to further interview rounds, and basis on the conversations maybe come to a mutual benefit for all the parties, which includes the recruiters, the stakeholders, and the candidates.
Right. So now every recruiter has that one story, the one that gets repeated at team lunches, conferences, and recruiter meetups. The story that starts with "you won't believe what happened," right? Let's get into those.
Sure.
So the first ghost file that I have for you, Nilesh, what's the one interview from your career that you still remember years later? What happened, and at what point did you realize this wasn't going to be a normal interview?
Sure. So Ayesha, I'll just give you one quick example of mine where I was just having this exploratory conversation with one of the candidates recently, right? We both jumped onto a quick call on Google Meet where we just tried to understand each of our background and potential job opportunities which we had at Netcore, right? And I was quite surprised because the discussion happened in such a manner where I ended up answering a lot of the questions which the candidate had for me, instead of being it the other way, right? And throughout that conversation, I got to know that the candidate wasn't just trying to get a job, whereas he was trying to understand more about the company, more about the current business, more about the challenges, more about culture and everything in sort of the filters that the candidate has potentially.
Okay.
Basically giving that mindset that they are evaluating the company as equally as the company evaluates the candidate as well.
Interesting.
Right? That is something which, recently is a story which stuck out to me.
Got it. So that was our ghost file number one. Moving on to the second ghost file, the candidate who broke every rule. Maybe they didn't have the perfect resume, maybe they didn't come from the expected background, but somehow they proved everyone wrong. What did others miss?
So I will tell you. So we were hiring for one of the role where we had two potential candidates. One, which was a no-brainer. The candidate's resume was a perfect match, came from a competition, all the right filters that we were looking out for, the same industry, same kind of a role and everything. It was a no-brainer for me as well that the priority on that candidature would be more than the other, right? But how the interviews happened for both the candidates and the outcome which came out eventually was that the second candidate showed a lot of synergies what the business was looking out for an immediate basis, solutions and challenges which the candidate can resolve on a real-time basis, like the problem solving skills, the curiosity, the right mentality that then the potential that they bring to the table from a long-term perspective, how they can, bring success to that role is something which made the other candidate stood out in terms of the first candidate.
Right. Got it.
So that is something which eventually we ended up offering the second candidate, and now she has joined the firm and she's doing pretty well as well. So something which went against even my own thought process.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that real insight, Nilesh. Let's open the third ghost file, the Great Escape. Recruiters often talk about candidates ghosting, right? What's the most memorable disappearing act that you have ever witnessed?
Sure. So I will take this again as an example. I had one of my network. She was exploring opportunities. We had been in touch looking out for opportunities when and where there was a right fit available in the company. And it happened that there was a role for which I pitched the candidate's profile, and she was an immediate responder, right? For any interview which I had to schedule, maybe it could be a short notice as well. She would always respond to it, right? And the entire interview process got conducted. She got selected as well, and we made an offer to her as well, right? But once she accepted the offer, it came to the notice that she stopped responding to the calls and texts. Not even just mine, anyone from the organization who were trying to reach out. I seek support from my colleagues as well who were trying to get in touch with her just to navigate her, to have a chat, to understand what's the current status.
Know the
behind it,
update.
right? Exactly. And months went by, and I got a text on WhatsApp from the same person that she had actually moved out to a different country as she got an opportunity to pursue her studies, her masters.
Okay.
And that's why she felt that, she being in the same network as in mine, and once she had spent and invested time in this interview process, accepting the offer, and then not having the guts, or you can say probably not feeling to communicate or how to communicate,
Right.
that this is something which they are not going to take up. And even if they take up, the next 3 months or 6 months, they are eventually going to end up somewhere else.
Correct.
Right. So this is something which gives an perception that there are many other perspectives, there are many other areas which even as a candidate people are very precise and concerned to choose. It's not just about giving interviews, getting selected, and joining the firm. There are many other personal factors as well involved in this.
Absolutely. That's a perspective that people usually miss out on. So let's close our ghost files with this one last final one. It's called a recruiter's regret. Every experienced recruiter has one regret. A candidate they underestimated, a hiring decision they'd revisit, or a lesson they learned the hard way. What is yours?
So the lesson that which I've learned the hard way is to always evaluate the person and not the resume. Something which I've learned across my experience, which I have started from a fresher myself, where I used to prioritize quantity over quality. But as and when we try to connect closely with the business need and the goals and objectives of how a particular role is defined in a company, and then try to focus and invest our time on not just going across and choosing the right CVs, right? But also connecting with the people, understanding their thought process, the expertise, the background, and the skills that they bring to the table, which can eventually meet the immediate business needs, which a company is looking to fill in that role.
Correct.
Right? So this is something which has made me myself evaluate as well, self-evaluate as a recruiter as well, and down the line given me a perspective that rejection and selection doesn't usually defines a person's capability.
Absolutely.
It's just what's there in front of the table for the company and as well as the candidate to pick it up.
Makes sense. So now that we've heard some incredible stories from you, Nilesh, now let's decode what they actually teach us. My first question to you: what's the biggest misconception candidates have about what recruiters are evaluating during a hiring process?
Sure. So the biggest misconception that I feel candidates have usually about recruiters is that they try to miss out on a lot of times having that authenticity in them during the conversations that I have with these candidates, right? Because they try to pitch themselves as the best fit for the role rather than the right fit.
Right.
And that at times takes out the nature of the conversation from a perspective where we just try to use the right vocabulary, use the right terms just to maybe, get into the interview process, or maybe just try to land that job, right? But eventually the success of that role will depend on how much of an background and how much of an experience of there and the skills that they bring to the table actually reflects through the conversations and to their work as well, right? So there is this term which I follow, which is adaptability, curiosity, and transparency is something which has to happen from both the parties, right? And this is how something where we can recreate the foundation and then probably everyone get the benefit out.
That brings me to my next question, Nilesh. What's a subtle red flag that candidates rarely think about but recruiters notice immediately?
For me, a subtle red flag would be honesty. Honesty, knowing your strengths, knowing your areas to probably adapt, being honest with yourself first, right, is something which in today's world, because again, the job market is quite tough, right? And everyone has that perspective that, if they speak the right language, if they use the right terms, right, is something which is going to make them stand out of the box. But at times, like soft skills, like honesty, being practical about things, right, these all also play a very vital role in deciding whether the person is the right fit for that role from a long-term perspective.
Right. If every job seeker watching this could remember just one lesson from today's conversation, what should it be?
One lesson: self-awareness. Self-awareness is very important nowadays. It's not just about, from a candidate's perspective. It's not just about being active, applying for jobs, or seeking out for job opportunities through the networks and all of it, right? Self-awareness can be in terms of how do you position yourself into that particular domain, in that particular industry, right? Maybe
Right.
you connect with a lot of people through events, maybe through online webinars, attending a lot of sessions, listening to a lot of leadership talks, which happens across different platforms, right? So how do you position yourself and how do you grow yourself as a professional is very, very important, and is something which now is getting the attention that it deserves, is what I feel personally.
Awesome. Before we close the loop on this, Nilesh, one last question to you. What's one truth about hiring that would make both recruiters and candidates slightly uncomfortable?
For recruiters, I will speak first. There are many times for us where we come across a profile or we speak to one of the candidate and feel that this is the right candidate, right?
Yeah.
And it's a no-brainer that the candidate is going to get selected, go through all the interview rounds, and we have to eventually make an offer, and the candidate will do well if they join the company, right? But a lot of the times, from evaluation perspective to the candidate joining the firm depends on a lot of other factors as well, right? Whether you talk about the current need of the role, whether you talk about the budget, whether you talk about the nature of how the role and the growth trajectory of that particular candidate is going to look like with the company, right?
Absolutely.
So that synergy, that alignment is very important. And at times, even for a recruiter, it is something which we have to let go, because we know that even the candidate on paper, on CV looks very strong, but eventually they might not end up joining the firm because of these important filters or these important factors which they will evaluate maybe sooner or later, right? And for candidates, most of the time, the interview outcomes, as I said, rejection and selection do not usually, showcase or reflect the capability of a person, right?
Right.
I myself have given interviews where I have felt I've done a good performance during the discussion, but the outcome didn't pave my way, right? But that is something where I am very open in terms of going for any discussion, having any interviews with an open mind, learn something new out of any conversations, right? And that is something which eventually will help you land where you have to be in the right place at the right.
That was beautifully put, very insightful, Nilesh. So that's a wrap on another TS Friday episode. A huge thank you to Nilesh for taking us behind the scenes and sharing stories that most people never get to hear. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know which course file was your favorite. I'll see you next Friday with another conversation from the world of talent, careers, and recruitment. See you next Friday. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nilesh.
Thank you so much, Aisha, for having me.